to the Coders Campus podcast, where you'll learn how to code from one of the best teachers in the industry. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, the Coders Campus podcast will teach you what you need to know to master the art of programming. And now, your host, Trevor Page.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, fellow coders, welcome to this next episode of the Coders Campus podcast. We've hit number 30, a nice round, even number for this series of podcasts. Now, this show is going to be a little bit different than the rest, and for good reason, and this is going to be a very, very exciting episode, because I've actually gone and done something completely different than I've ever done on this podcast before, and I've reached out to sort of a past colleague of mine at a company I used to work for called Point Click Care, and I've asked her to join me today and talk a little bit about the hiring process. So for you guys out there learning how to code, it's great, but you're learning things and you're having fun and so on and so forth. But once you're sort of not, I don't want to say done learning, but once you've hit a point where your skill set can be, leveraged and taken advantage of and used in the real world, typically you guys want to move on to some sort of a career. Right? The vast majority of you are interested in taking your knowledge in the Java language specifically and turning it into a paid career. So because of that, a lot of you haven't gone through the formal education system. You haven't gone through university or college or what have you, and you want to figure out how you can get a job. So this is essentially the conversation that I had today with today's guest. Her name is Melanie Window, and like I said, she works at Point Click Care, which is a company in the Greater Toronto area. And anyway, I will hand things off to the previously recorded conversation I had with her, so you can chime in and listen to this great conversation that we had. Okay, so today I'm joined by Melanie Window. Welcome to this Coders Campus podcast. This is where I'm going to dive into sort of the brain of someone who I used to work at the company. I'm not sure, were you at the company between 2012 and was it 2016?
Yeah.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all. I worked there for... Did I leave in... No, I left in 2012. So before 2012, were you at Point Click Care?
I was there for a little bit of the time. I think we overlapped for a bit. Yeah.
So you might have just crossed paths. So I used to work at this company called Point Click Care, which is where Melanie works. And really, I'm going to be picking her brain with respect to the hiring practices and whatnot, and sort of the next step for the coders listening, which is, hey, I've learned the Java language, and I've learned JavaScript, I've learned all these different technologies. Now what can I do? What are the next steps for taking what I know and possibly getting a job? So this is exactly the right person that we need to talk with. Point Click Care, I'll give the quick little preamble on them. They're a software company in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to work there for 5 years. Amazing company. Treated their employees like gold. They sort of model themselves after Google. I'm assuming you're sort of still in that phase where you're trying to emulate Google and all their practices.
A little bit. We're better than Google, though.
We're better than Google. I love it. So, it was such a great time I had working there. I have nothing but great things to say about the staff and all the employees and my entire experience there. So I'm very excited to dive into her brain and get the answers to the burning questions that the coders have, which is, essentially, how do I get a job? So there's so many different places we can start. Do you think we have a good suggestion as to where we can start in terms of getting to the point where I know something about programming? So now, how could I get even the interview? So is there a specific thing that you look for in coders when it comes to their resume, or is there anything that they can do to stand out?
Sure. So just a couple of thoughts on that. I guess the most important thing is that I always recommend, especially for junior level people, that they don't have a standard resume, that they take the time every time that they're applying for a job to make sure that they're looking at what the requirements are for the job and making sure they're tweaking their resume to speak to those requirements. So, having one generic resume isn't always the best approach, and people don't often take the time to do that. So I highly recommend that. And I mean, it's really also important that they're applying for jobs for which they feel that they can do, right? Some people apply for, will come into our website and apply for, 10 to 15 different jobs. And, that just doesn't make sense either. So I think it's really important that when they're looking at the jobs that they're applying to, they feel that they have, a good percentage of the qualifications for the job, and can really put their foot forward should they be selected, and even to be selected. Another thing I strongly recommend for junior level candidates is a cover letter. So it's not always needed for a more experienced person, but for a junior level person, it can help them express what they're passionate about and why they want to work for that specific company. So again, it's not about applying to every company. It's also about making sure that you really want to work for that company and that you can express that and how your values match the values of that organization as well. So, for instance, when I'm looking at junior level candidates, I want to hear people who are passionate about healthcare and the fact that, our technology helps others. And that's something that's really important. So making sure that there's a match, because at the junior level, fit is one of the most important things, right? Because they're not going to have a ton of experience, as you know. And so speaking to the fit and the culture of the organization and why you want to work there is also really critical.
Okay, so that's really good information. So essentially what would be required there from the coder side of the equation is they need to obviously research the company. And this is something I learned about back in when I was in school in 2000 and whatever it was, 8 or 9. That's still good to do. So you research the company. So you touched on the values of the company. So
correct.
What values did the company hold, and specifically also their target market? So in the case of Point Click Care, it's healthcare and working with I'm assuming it's still long-term care facilities and assisted living and all those things. So understanding the customer base and how the company helps the customer base, right? So and find some way to connect with that and to say, yes, this is truly something that interests me, and to get that through in the cover letter specifically. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, and I think that would continue. If you can get it across in the cover letter and you can really truly get behind it, if you are granted an interview, then you will be able to show that in the interview stage as well. Like, it will continue on. If you can sort of, as you say, connect with the company and the values and what they do, that will make a huge difference throughout all stages of the hiring process.
Very, very good tip. Now, also you mentioned people, and I never thought this would happen, maybe because I'd never done this. You said people often apply to like 12 jobs or something at the same time? Correct.
That's it's very common.
That's very common. And is that like an immediate turnoff, an immediate red flag for you?
Well, I think it's nice to know what people really want to do, right? And it's okay to apply, especially as a junior level person. Again, and I know, people say, should I apply to other jobs, right? And I think that there's an opportunity to look at other ways to get into the organization as well, but in a limited capacity. As I said, you don't need to apply for every job, and you're definitely going to want to be exposed to the software in whatever role you apply to. But, we do get people, junior level people applying to intermediate or senior level jobs, and they're just applying and applying and applying. And it's very difficult to sort of, be able to sort of look at them with respect to that individual role when they're not focused on what they want to do.
Right.
Or that's the way it appears, right?
Okay. Makes sense. So that's good. I never would have thought, I've never done that myself, but if someone listening has, then that's a very good tip as well. Don't, make sure that you know the position that you want, make sure you know that you're qualified for it, and apply to just that one. Now, one other thing that would be important to outline is there like an industry standard? In my mind, I have one, but is there an industry standard in terms of with respect to programming? What qualifies as junior, what qualifies as intermediate, and what qualifies as senior?
I don't think that there's an industry standard per se, because you do experience a variety of people, and it's not sort of years of experience. It's really more sort of the quality of the work that you've done as well, right?
Oh,
so yeah, there are people who've only touched certain parts of the stack. There are people who have only done maintenance instead of doing, from scratch development. So it can be a gray area. Junior is pretty straightforward, usually less than 2 years. But some people with 2 years can be operating at an intermediate level too, depending on the quality of their experience as well. And then it gets really gray between intermediate and senior. Again, it's really, have they worked through the full stack? Have they worked on, projects that are are more challenging and from scratch, as I said. So
Okay.
there's no standard per se.
So now, for specifically with my students and the people that I teach in my programs, I teach the full stack. So I make sure that they get knowledge in HTML with JavaScript, with Ajax and jQuery, and then the business layer, the Java and related technologies. I specifically teach Spring and Hibernate. I know PCC, Point Click Care, has a specific implementation of what they call the ORM, which is essentially it's called, anyway, I don't need to delve into that. And then I also teach the database skills as well. So I do teach the full stack, and someone who would have gone through my courses would be able to create their own applications, web applications from scratch using all of those technologies. So it's good to hear that you place a little bit more emphasis on that experience over years in the job, so to speak. So having said that, if someone doesn't have a formal university, college level education, how can they stand out? So I know for you guys, I believe when I was there, I was also doing some interviewing. I believe we only looked at people with some sort of post-secondary education. You don't have to answer this specifically. My question would be, do you guys still do that? But I guess more specifically, if you don't want to, stay with Point Click Care, in the industry, is there a more of a growing trend towards sort of, not having that arbitrary must-have college or university education?
So yes, we definitely still look for a college or university education. I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule, but if they don't have that, we do look for some sort of experience, along with whatever training they've had as well. So it's sort of an if or there. I think it's challenging without sort of the experience and the college or university education to find a job. However, that being said, I would recommend that people be cognizant of areas within the market that are deficient, right? Where there are a strong need for people. And you can tell this by going onto job boards and seeing sort of what are the most prevalent type of openings that you see. It's not a developer role, but for instance, DevOps is an area right now that is very underserviced from a candidate perspective, and I think to a certain degree as well, like some of the specialty skills, the hotter, newer skills, big data, that sort of thing. So that's one area I think, if you are being challenged because you don't have that formal education, it's also where you're going to pick up the extra courses and the extra education as well. And I think, some of the questions you sent me ahead of time just sort of give me an idea of what people were interested in. I think it's really important if you don't have any experience as well and you don't have the formal education. Some people create portfolios. They create their own website to demonstrate their skill sets. And then you can put that right on your resume, a link right on your resume, a link right on your LinkedIn profile to that portfolio. So I would really recommend that. But I'd also recommend continuing to take courses and be on top of what the most relevant technology is and where those skill gaps might be.
Good. So now, one thing that sort of stands out, a lot of people ask me is, okay, instead of having like a formal education, what sort of weight do hiring managers or whatever put on like the Oracle certifications? So if you're an Oracle certified associate or whatever the level is, does that help boost someone up above another candidate, or even side by side to another candidate who might have university education? Is there any sort of correlation between the actual Oracle certifications?
That's a really good question. We haven't really paid much attention to it, the Oracle certifications, to be honest. To me, it's more, what you've done, what sort of projects you've done. So even if it is projects within a learning capacity, then I want to know about them. But the actual Oracle certification, I don't think we put a ton of emphasis on that.
Like that, that's such fantastic information just for me to know that. And obviously for the people listening, that's really good to know. So that's an advantage in my opinion, for people who don't have time and the money to go and take these exams and whatnot, to know that you can do. For me, this is what I say. I'm very passionate about programming. I love programming. To be able to just go out and build my own projects and have fun with it, and then be able to demonstrate those skills, that's great. That you put that sort of emphasis on those people. I shouldn't say emphasis over an actual Oracle certification.
Sure. Yeah. The experience is really important. So, something else I think that's really important, and I'm sort of jumping in here, so I hope you don't mind.
No, for sure. Go for it.
If there's any way that you can get your students or the people listening to this podcast can get any sort of experience, whether it's volunteering through a work placement program, whether it's like a new immigrant program or something like Career Edge, that sort of thing. I think getting your foot in the door, and even working on a contract, a short-term basis, and again, even if it's unpaid, any sort of hands-on experience in addition to the courses will make every month of that experience will make a difference to their application, because then we can see that they've actually worked on software in a work setting. So any way that they can sort of work with those programs, get in somewhere, as I say, on a volunteer basis, that will make a huge difference for them.
That's good. Well. Now, is there like a specific number of months you would recommend? Like, is it a 6 month? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Like, is there a number you have in your head for that?
There is, and I would say a minimum of 4 months. A year would be great, but it's hard to work on paid for a year, or paid with little pay. So 4 to 6 months, I think, would be ideal. Okay. Plus, it gives you a foot in the door with a company who might hire you on permanently, but it also gives you a good reference as
Amazing.
well.
And this is a story I've told before in the podcast, but I'll say it again. My first job was something called a forms analyst. So I was university educated. I had a university education in the Java language and whatnot. But my first job was not actually programming. It was doing forms for an insurance company. But that company had a programming team, right? So I got my foot in the door, just like Melanie said, and I was able to do, I think it was just shy of 12 months in that job. Wasn't the greatest pay, but I was just out of school, and any pay for a student or a post student, if you will, is good. And I got my foot in the door, and then I got transferred over to the Java team, and I was working with the Java team, and then I was able to get recruited by Point Click Care, and then that's where the rest of my professional career carried out at Point Click Care. So that's even for someone like myself who had a university education. It's tough for companies to sort of take the risk, right? So they'll take a lower risk for bringing you into a position where you can get the experience and you can show that you're a hard worker, that you can communicate, like Melanie said, that you can work in a work environment, right? Because I assume it's just as important for you to have the working skills and the social skills as it is for you to have the Java skills. Would that statement be more or less accurate?
It's very, very accurate, especially now sort of with the Agile Scrum approach. That communication skills and the ability to work as part of a team is more important than ever. So showing that and demonstrating that, as well as your fit, again, going back to the fit for the company, puts you definitely way ahead of somebody who's not within the organization. As well, a lot of good organizations may also work with you, especially after sort of the 6 month mark you've been working in a job, where you might be able to do some shadowing as well, right? Within a development team. So, we've had people who've been aspiring to different areas of the company, who've expressed that to their managers here and have given them an opportunity to, shadow and work with a team, maybe half a day a week or that sort of thing, to get them the exposure to what the real work would be like and the teams that they would be working with. And that's an invaluable opportunity that you can have. As you say, I totally agree with what you said. Take a job, get in an organization that you're pretty keen on, and work towards that role that you want to obtain.
Now, I guess, so I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. I want to work for an organization. Let's say it's Point Click Care. I don't have a university education, but I do have an education in programming. I feel fairly confident in my skills. And I want to maybe do some volunteer work or maybe I'd want to, do a role that maybe like a quality assurance role. That's typically a good a path that I see a lot of people get into quality assurance and then move over. If you were to demonstrate your skills in this position, how long would it really be? Would you have to be in that position before you could ask to be moved over to, let's say, the development team? What in your eyes is a decent number in terms of months or years or whatever?
I'd say at least a year.
At least a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent. I mean, you can start talking about it for sure. I mean, you're a person with career goals, but I would say sort of a year is a good point to be at before you really start looking at that.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. And that's pretty much how my story played out as well. It was about 12 months that I was in there for, and I had brought it up very early on in my position with the other company. And they didn't. I don't believe anyone was. I felt like it would. I felt like it would be looked on as bad. I would be looked on as a nuisance for saying, "Hey, my goal is to be a Java programmer, but I'm not right now, and I just want to let you know." So, do you see that as a nuisance at all, or is there any sort of negativity that comes along with someone saying, "I want to be in another position"?
I think it really depends on how you approach it as well, right?
Okay.
I think the way that you just communicated it was an aspiration and it was a goal, right? Not an expectation or something that you felt that you should be given. So, it's all in how you present it and, that you're willing to prove yourself. I'm sure that was part of the conversation, that you're willing to prove yourself. But there's nothing negative to aspiring to another role, another department for sure. I think it's just that, you're willing to work towards it and you let them know that. That's
good. That's it. I didn't realize I'd said it like that, but that's exactly how I said it. It's I aspire to be this. It's not I demand to be this.
Correct.
It's I aspire. Okay, I like that. And I mean, any working experience is going to be good. So even if you as the coder is in a situation where you're volunteering your time or you are working in a non-development position, and for some reason doesn't work out and the company doesn't move you into a development position, it's still experience you can put on your resume. And I believe, like Melanie pointed out, that's what companies are looking for. Real world, on the job experience. That more or less, from what I understand in this conversation, will trump more or less anything else in terms of, Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes absolute sense.
Perfect. So the goal for you guys listening should be get me into a company, get me working, get me communicating with my team members, let me prove myself and my worth to another company. That should be the first step and the first goal. And I think maybe if you were to have that language come out in your cover letter, would that be helpful as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you gotta show that you're going to be a team player. As much as these buzzwords fly around like I'm a team player, I'm assuming just writing I'm a team player is not good enough. You probably have to have some sort of method to prove that you're a team player. So, really, I think for these guys, it's the first step. It's how the biggest question is always going to be, how can I get that interview, right? Yeah. How can I get that phone call? So is there anything else you can think of that would stand out on a resume or a cover letter that would make you say, I want to give this guy or this girl a shot at an interview?
I don't have anything to add from the resume or cover letter, but I did want to point out the importance of networking in terms of getting in the door. So for us as an organization here, referrals are very important, and it's a big source for us. We have good people working for us, and we trust that they're going to refer good people to us. So work your network and build your network. So as you're looking for a job, make sure you're connecting with people who work in the fields that you want to work in, and that you're trying to leverage those as much as possible, and increase your network. Get out to industry events, hackathons, conferences, so that user groups, right? Get out and about interacting with people, because I've had so many people come to me ready to vouch for people they've interacted with through these types of forums on a regular basis. And that can really make a difference. And they're going directly to the managers as well and saying, you need to give this person a shot. And they'll come to me and say, I want to speak to this person because they've been referred by so-and-so. So really networking with the people who are already in your network and building it even further, very, very important.
Mm-hmm. And I believe even one of so when I was working at Point Click Care, I had a friend from the previous organization I had worked for, who I vouched for, and he came in through that process and he was hired, and I believe he's still working there. So, yeah, definitely referrals are going to be a big thing. So that might be something that someone sitting here listening to the podcast might not have considered. I certainly haven't I haven't thought about referrals and everything in quite a while. So there you go. That's very, very good advice. Okay. So is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you feel would be important to talk about and to tell these coders listening with respect to their goal of becoming an employed programmer? I see you checking your notes and going over things.
I know. No, I think I got the opportunity. I made a bunch of notes in preparation. I think I got to touch on most of the points. And I think we've covered all of the key aspects to trying to set themselves up for success and finding a job.
So if there's anyone in my audience right now listening who lives in sort of the greater Toronto area, which isn't going to be a whole lot, there's definitely more in the US. I assume you guys don't have remote positions available for coders, do you?
We do have an office in Minnesota, in Bloomington. That's where our home healthcare product is developed. Mm-hmm. So we do have positions there, and we do have a small office in Rochester as well, in the U.S. So very, very small in Rochester, but we do have coders in both of those locations.
Excellent. So, this is from me to you guys listening. I can say that this is a fantastic organization to work for. So if they are interested, if they say, healthcare sounds good, and to be able to follow Trevor's footsteps and work for the same organization he did, is there anyone they could reach out to at your office or somewhere? Like, what would the best way be to reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in possibly applying for one of these positions available?
So the best way would be to keep an eye on our website for openings for Java developer. So we would post a junior role just as a Java developer. And so to keep their eyes open, or other types of developers. So we also iOS and Android and that sort of thing. So keep an eye on our website. If they say a specific role, then apply. That's the best way.
There you go. Just say Trevor sent you. We'll give you a special treat. No,
right.
Excellent. So thank you so much for your time. I can't thank you enough. This has been very, very helpful. Not only, I learned some things today, so that's fantastic. So I can only assume it'll be very helpful to those listening. So thank you so much for taking the time and for blessing us with all your knowledge.
My pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so a huge thank you goes out to Melanie Window for taking the time out of her busy day to meet with me and talk business when it comes to how to get the biggest upper hand as you possibly can when it comes to getting an interview for a potential programming job. Or like Melanie said, hey, maybe it's not a programming job, maybe it's just another job that's similar, maybe she said in the QA field or the development operations field, who knows? Get that foot in the door, prove to this company that you are a good, valuable employee. You can be a good teammate and so on and so forth. And then you can make the shift over to becoming a programmer. So there's definitely routes, there's definitely paths you can take to get or to reach your ultimate goal, which is to become a Java programmer. Cool? So if you want to, you can go check out, like Melanie said, pointclickcare.com. Point like you're pointing at something, click like you're clicking on the mouse. Care like healthcare, pointclickcare.com, and check out their job section. Okay, so if there's any jobs in and around the area that you live, you can apply to them. Or maybe, hey, you want to, fly out and move your family or move yourself out to one of their offices. Certainly, like I would say, hey, Canada's a good place to be with respect to the booming tech industry that we have near Toronto. So, hey, it's not the worst decision you can make to move out to Canada, except for obviously the weather in the winter. Yes, I will agree. It's a little bit harsh, but hey, makes you stronger as a person, right? So check it out, pointclickcare.com, apply to those jobs. And if you're someone who's gone through, my Java Super course or the, Learn Core Java and Learn Enterprise Java courses, you're in a situation where you have that full stack knowledge that Melanie was talking about. So now it's time to go out and create, real world examples of your code and create projects and showcase that portfolio like she was saying. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do to get to the point where, you could possibly get in and get interviewed and possibly get hired for some sort of position. So put in the work, put in the effort, put in the hours, especially if you've taken my courses. These are what are going to prepare you for the real world, especially for a job at Point Click Care. And yeah, there's nothing else I can say other than thank you so much to Melanie for giving us her time. And if you want to check out the show notes for this page, you can go to coderscampus.com/30. That's 30, because this was episode number 30. Can't wait to see you there. Can't wait to hear about your amazing stories and what you're going to do with yourself in the future. So be sure to reach out for us. If you have a fun story or a success story, reach out, let us know how it went. Can't wait to hear from you. All right, take care, everyone. Happy learning as always, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coders Campus podcast. But before you go, Trevor has a favor to ask you. In order to keep these episodes free, he'd love for you to leave a rating and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to coderscampus.com/review to leave your own rating and review of the show. So if you have 30 seconds to spare right now, please help out by leaving a rating and review via coderscampus.com/review. It will ensure that you continue to get these awesome free podcast episodes each and every week. So if you like free swag, head on over to coderscampus.com/review. Happy learning!